Tesla still owns the spotlight, but owning one can become painful the moment it needs repair. In this video, 4 cheaper EV brands make a stronger case on service, parts, insurance, and survival. Number 4 has already died once and come back, and stay until number 1 because it may be the answer everyone keeps ignoring. Number 4. General Motors. Walk into a Chevrolet dealership in a small Ohio town and count the service bays. Now count how many Tesla service centers exist in that entire state. As of May 2026, Tesla operated around 335 locations across the United States. General Motors sells through more than 4,000 American dealerships, and almost every one of them has a lift, a parts counter, and a technician who can order a fender and have it on the bench by Thursday. That gap is the entire argument for General Motors, and it is a boring argument, which is exactly why people underrate it. This is a company that has been building cars since 1908. It survived the Great Depression, the oil shocks of the 70s, the Japanese import wave, and a bankruptcy in 2009 that should have ended it. Institutions that have already died once tend to build a certain kind of muscle memory. They stop assuming the good years last forever. In 2025, that muscle memory showed up on the sales sheet. General Motors finished as the second largest seller of electric vehicles in America, behind Tesla and ahead of everyone else. The Chevrolet Equinox EV became the third best-selling electric vehicle in the entire country, trailing only the Model Y and the Model 3. It starts at just under $35,000 and returns up to 319 miles of range on a full charge. The new Bolt slots in underneath it at under $29,000. Cadillac's electric lineup grew alongside it. The entry-level Optic climbed 43% in the first half of 2026, and the 3-row Vistic more than doubled. That matters, because it means the architecture underneath is scaling across price points instead of leaning on one hero model. The platform is called BEV3, and it also sits under the Honda Prologue and the Acura ZDX, since Honda chose to buy into it rather than engineer its own. Now the repair side, because this is where the Chevrolet badge quietly wins. The Equinox and the Blazer ride on a conventional body structure with steel and aluminum panels bolted and welded, the way body shops have been fixing cars for 60 years. When a quarter panel gets creased in a parking garage, a certified Chevrolet shop pulls the part number, and so can 1,000 independent collision shops that never signed a manufacturer agreement. The battery packs are built in modules, which means a single failed section can often be addressed without condemning the whole assembly. Every one of those choices was made by engineers who assumed the car would eventually be repaired by someone they had never met, in a shop they did not own, using a parts catalog they did not control. That assumption is the line between a fixable car and a disposable one. The insurance market notices things like this. In a 2026 analysis of electric vehicle premiums, the Chevrolet Silverado EV landed under $2,000 a year for full coverage, sitting right alongside comparable gas trucks. Across that same dataset, every single Tesla model cleared $2,800, and the Model X came in near $4,500. Here is where honesty matters though, because this is not a straight line up and to the right for General Motors. Its electric sales fell 33% in the second quarter of 2026, down to just under 31,000 units. Equinox EV volume dropped 41% in the first half of the year after the federal tax credit expired. The next generation Equinox has slipped toward the end of the decade, and the company is bringing plug-in hybrids back to North America in 2027 to bridge the gap. So General Motors is not winning right now. It is enduring, which over a long enough timeline is the more useful skill. But endurance built on an American dealer network only matters inside America. The next company on this list plays a completely different game, and it has already beaten Tesla at the thing Tesla was supposed to be best at. Number 3. BYD. Picture a factory floor in Shenzhen, where the lithium cells, the semiconductors, the electric motors, and the rare earth magnets are all being made under the same corporate roof. That is not a hypothetical supply chain. That is how BYD actually works, and it is the reason its cars cost what they cost. BYD started in 1994 as a battery company. It did not build a car until 2003. That order of operations matters more than almost anything else in this video, because BYD learned to make cells first and vehicles second, while nearly every rival learned it the other way around. In 2025, BYD delivered roughly 2.26 million battery electric vehicles worldwide. Tesla delivered about 1.64 million. That was the first time in more than a decade that Tesla was not the world's largest seller of pure electric cars. Across all its powertrains, BYD moved more than 4.6 million vehicles, and its overseas sales passed 1 million units for the first time, growing more than 150% year over year. The two companies keep trading the lead. Tesla took it back in the first quarter of 2026. Then BYD delivered 557,000 battery electric vehicles between April and June, comfortably ahead of Tesla's 480,000 for the same window. The technology story is genuinely interesting. The Blade battery uses lithium iron phosphate chemistry arranged in long, flat cells that slot directly into the pack floor. Lithium iron phosphate gives up some energy density compared with nickel-based chemistries, but it runs cooler, tolerates daily charging to 100%, and costs less per kilowatt hour. BYD has also rolled out a flash charging platform aimed at 5-minute top-ups, with a target of 20,000 charging stations across China by the end of 2026. The manufacturing footprint is spreading just as fast. BYD has been standing up assembly plants in Thailand, Brazil, Hungary, and Turkey, each sized in the neighborhood of 150,000 vehicles a year, built largely to produce cars inside tariff walls rather than ship into them. Within 5 years, BYD has passed Tesla in sales across more than 20 countries and regions. Registration data through 2026 showed year-over-year growth in France, Norway, Denmark, Spain, and Portugal, and roughly 43% of its June deliveries went to markets outside China. On repair costs, look at Australia, where BYD has been selling in volume long enough to generate real ownership data. BYD offers capped price servicing for up to 10 years through its dealer network. Owners of the pure electric models typically pay somewhere between $340 and $450 Australian dollars a year. The support footprint runs past 100 BYD service centers, plus roughly 275 partner workshops nationwide. The traction battery carries an 8-year or 160,000 kilometer warranty, with 6 years or 150,000 kilometers on the vehicle itself. That is a maintenance bill closer to a scooter than a family SUV. Chemistry feeds directly into that math. Average battery pack prices across the industry fell to around $108 per kilowatt hour in 2025, and lithium iron phosphate cells from Chinese suppliers sit well below the industry average at the cell level. A cheaper pack means a cheaper worst-case scenario, and the worst case is exactly what an insurer prices against when it decides whether to repair your car or write it off. The caveats are real and worth saying out loud. BYD does not sell passenger cars in the United States, and tariff policy makes that unlikely to change soon. Its service networks in Europe, Latin America, and Southeast Asia are young, and a young network means parts can take longer to arrive. The price war inside China has compressed margins across the entire industry, BYD included. Still, a company that makes its own cells, its own chips, and its own motors has a structural cost floor that a company buying those things cannot match. Now, the next brand on this list has done something no one expected. It built the cheapest electric SUV in America to insure, and it did it while everyone else was retreating. Number 2. Hyundai Motor Group. Outside Ellabelle, Georgia, there is a factory that did not exist 4 years ago. Hyundai calls it Metaplant America. It represents an investment of about $7.5 billion, and at full production, it is designed to build 500,000 electric and hybrid vehicles a year across roughly 10 models. Right now, the lines are running the Ioniq 5, the 3-row Ioniq 9, and the Kia Sportage Hybrid. 30 minutes down the road, another plant came online in 2026. That one is a joint venture with SK On, worth around $5 billion, producing 35 gigawatt hours of battery cells annually. That is enough for roughly 300,000 vehicles a year, and the first cells went into the Ioniq 9. While competitors were writing down electric vehicle assets and canceling model programs, Hyundai poured concrete. The market noticed. In the first half of 2026, Hyundai sold nearly 27,000 battery electric vehicles in the United States, making it the third most popular electric brand in the country. Ioniq 5 volume passed 20,000 units and grew about 9%, in a market where overall electric sales fell roughly 20% year over year. Now the repair economics, and this is the part that surprises people. The Ioniq 5 is one of the cheapest electric vehicles in America to insure. In a 2026 premium study, it landed under $2,000 a year for full coverage, sitting in the same neighborhood as ordinary gasoline crossovers, while the average electric vehicle came in above $3,200. Across the whole Hyundai lineup, the average annual repair cost runs around $468 against a $652 average across all brands. There is an engineering reason for that. EGMP also runs at 800 volts, which lets these cars accept a fast charge without the extreme thermal load that ages a pack early. Kia builds the EV6 and the 3-row EV9 on the same bones, and the EV9 is now assembled in West Point, Georgia, a couple of hours up the road from the Meta plant. Then there is the warranty, which is unusually deep. Hyundai and Kia cover the high-voltage battery for 10 years or 100,000 miles, and unlike the powertrain coverage, that battery warranty transfers to the next owner. Hyundai also guarantees the pack will not fall below 70% of original capacity during that window. For a used electric car buyer in year 6, that single clause changes the entire risk calculation. New Hyundais also include 3 years of complimentary scheduled maintenance, which means the opening stretch of ownership costs close to nothing beyond tires and electricity. The honest caveat is this: when something does go wrong inside a sealed pack, Hyundai and Kia tend to replace a large assembly rather than open the battery and repair it internally. That is a liability decision more than an engineering one, and it means the savings show up in routine ownership and collision work rather than in catastrophic battery events. Even so, the pattern holds. Cheap to insure, cheap to service, warranted longer than almost anyone else. Which brings us to the company that spent 5 years being mocked for moving too slowly and is now sitting on the cheapest repair bills in the entire automotive industry. Number 1. Toyota. Toyota has built more than 300 million vehicles since it was founded. Not sold, built. That number is worth sitting with for a moment, because scale like that produces something no startup can manufacture, which is a global population of mechanics who already know how the parts fit together. The numbers back it up in the most literal way possible. In 2026 repair data, the average annual repair cost across all Toyota models came to $441 against $652 across every brand tracked. Over a 10-year window, Toyota ranks as the least expensive brand to maintain of any full-line manufacturer on the road. For years, the criticism was that none of that mattered because Toyota refused to build electric cars. Executives kept talking about a multi-pathway strategy while the BZ4X sat alone in showrooms, a single awkward crossover representing an entire company's electric ambitions. That argument stopped working in 2026. The BZ4X was renamed the BZ and heavily reworked, now offering up to 314 miles of range with a native North American charging port. In March, the BZ Woodland arrived at dealerships, a rugged all-wheel drive version with 8.5 inches of ground clearance and a 3,500-pound tow rating, starting around $45,000. The CHR returned to America as a pure electric crossover with dual motors and 338 horsepower, starting in the high 30s. And at the end of 2026, Toyota brings out a 3-row electric Highlander with up to 320 miles of range. The market responded faster than most people expected. The Toyota BZ outsold the Chevrolet Equinox EV in the first half of 2026 and finished as the 4th best-selling electric vehicle in America in the second quarter. Behind that sits the infrastructure. In Liberty, North Carolina, Toyota built a battery plant that cost nearly $14 billion, running 14 production lines with roughly 5,000 jobs on site. It has been shipping cells since 2025. Toyota then committed another $10 billion to American operations over 5 years, bringing its total investment in the country to around $60 billion. None of that is funded by hope. It is funded by hybrids. The Camry, the RAV4, and the Corolla Cross generate enormous, boring, reliable profit, and that profit pays for the electric transition without a single funding round. Toyota has sold more than 6.5 million electrified vehicles since the Prius reached America in 2000, and that installed base is what funds the battery lines now. A cheaper lithium iron phosphate pack aimed squarely at mass-market models sits next on the roadmap, and the company still holds a public target of 3.5 million electric sales a year by 2030. On repair, Toyota's Advantage compounds. Roughly 1,500 American dealerships carry parts. The electric models use conventional body structures that ordinary collision shops can section and replace. Component sharing across the lineup keeps part prices down, and there is a worldwide base of independent mechanics who have been fixing Toyota hybrid systems since the first Prius arrived in 2000. Two honest caveats. Toyota's solid-state battery, the technology it keeps promising, has slipped from 2020 to 2023 to 2026, and now sits at 2027 or 2028 with Lexus getting it first. And Toyota's global electric volume is still a fraction of Tesla's. It is also fair to say the company spent years lobbying against tighter emissions rules while it hedged, and plenty of people in the electric community have not forgotten that. Whether you read it as prudence or obstruction probably depends on what is parked in your driveway. But Toyota is not trying to win 2026. It is trying to still be here in 2050 with the cheapest service bay in the industry. So look at what these four share: the dealer density that puts a parts counter within driving distance of almost anyone. Body structures a normal collision shop can actually repair. Modular packs and shared platforms that keep component prices honest. Warranties that survive the first owner. Tesla's premiums tell the other side of that story. In 2026, electric vehicles averaged around $3,150 a year to insure against roughly $2,200 for gasoline cars, and Tesla sat at the top end of that spread. One Southern California repair marketplace put average Tesla estimates near $3,900 against $1,600 for a Honda. Some of that traces back to design. When teardown specialists at Munro and Associates opened the structural battery pack in the Model Y, they found cells bonded into the housing with polyurethane tough enough that the team needed 2 full days just to get inside, and they described the pack's repairability as essentially zero. Insurers priced that quietly by totaling cars a little earlier than they otherwise would. To be fair, Tesla is not collapsing. It just posted its best second quarter ever globally with 480,000 deliveries. Independent crash research has even found that its large structural castings can make some repairs cheaper, not worse, when a shop sections them properly. Tesla is not dying. It is becoming something else. In January 2026, Musk retired the Model S and the Model X, and the Fremont line that built them is being converted to assemble Optimus robots. That is a company about autonomy that also happens to sell cars. The 4 brands on this list are still just trying to sell you a car you can afford to keep. Outlasting Tesla was never about who builds the fastest thing on the road. It comes down to who is still affordable to own in year 7, when the warranty is gone and the bumper is cracked and you are standing in a parking lot, deciding whether to fix it or walk away.